Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. Hello, everyone. My name is Leah Rolson, and welcome back to another hour of learning here with Michael Stores. And we have a Faber-Castell USA. I would like to thank everybody for being here and joining us this afternoon. Today is going to be a very Zen type of class. But before that, I'd like to say hello to everybody. Hello there. Hey, Angie. Hello. I hope you're all doing well. It's so nice you guys are here. Thank you for tuning in. Hi, Mary. Hi, Lisa. Hi, Tina. So we have some good friends from Austin. Lisa's from Florida. Hello from chilly upstate New York. Woohoo! Not in Texas. Hi, Karen from California. Daisy is from Los Angeles. Hello, everybody. Hey, Laura from Florida. Yes, you're back, Belle. Hello and welcome back. Hi, Stephanie from Chicago. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much. Okay, so like I said, today's class is going to be really very relaxing because it's going to be we're calling it a mindful journaling, right? Mindful journaling when it comes to but using some watercolor. But I'm not using a watercolor pen. Hey, Callie, hello there. I'm using some Faber-Castell Goldfaber Aqua dual markers. So this is what we're going to use today. Again, like always, I always say this, that if you don't have the type of materials that I'm using today, if you have any water soluble markers, that is going to work. If you have watercolor markers, that's perfect. That's great. I also have different type of brushes in here. So if you have brushes, if you have the water brush, that is a round brush, that's going to work. You don't have to have these brushes. I might just use this one. I think this one's number 6. I love round brushes, but I use flat brushes every once in a while as well. So I have this one that is just a flat. So, if you have any of these, make sure you grab them because you never know when we're going to use it. Because today is about mark making. And of course, mark making is we're going to make some marks in our journal. So aside from watercolor, we're also going to discuss a little bit about journaling. I would love to know from, if any of you are doing any type of journaling. This is something that I'm super passionate about. That is why we do a lot of journaling here in our classes for Michael's. We do some bullet journals. We do some mixed media, like what we're going to do today. We're doing some, planning, mindful journaling. So today is really not about journaling, but the things that you can do in your journal. Now, like what I've mentioned, I have been very passionate journaling ever since I was young. Little did I know that with the type of journal that I was keeping, there's a term for it. I didn't know this. I think I've learned it kind of like maybe 4 months ago or something like that. So there's a term that's called a commonplace notebook. So when I was young, grade school, I think I started when I was in 5th grade. I really love to write. I love writing poems. I love writing lyrics of a song. So I always, keep a notebook. And I think my notebook back then was like a ledger, something like that, so nothing special. And so that is something that I really want to remind all of you that a journal, because if you go on social media, if you're following a lot of creative friends, creative artists on social media, so you've probably heard many different terms of journal. Bullet journal is a term that, people are using to keep productive, to stay productive, right? To help them with productivity. And then we have art journal, then we have mixed media journal, then we have a documenting type of journal. So what those are just terms, just different terms, because a journal is something that I think something that should be yours. So there's no wrong or right when it comes to journaling. It is something that you have to make it yours. Does that make sense? So, hey, Georgiana, thank you so much for joining in. Okay, so today I am going to be using a mixed media journal because I will be working with some water soluble markers. So these are the Goldfaber Aqua. dual markers. These are water-based dye inks. They are water soluble, so you can use it with water, kind of like use it like watercolor. I have this small blending palette. If you don't have anything like this, if you have like, you know, a Ziploc or anything like very smooth, okay, so you can definitely use that. So EJ said that I have kept a journal since forever. Mine is more and more of a documenting journal now since we have moved to Panama. Okay, so do you like putting in some photos in there and all that? So that's very interesting because I like to do that as well. I have like a little traveler's notebook where I keep some photos. I used to do like a big scrapbook album, but now I'm like, okay, that's too big. There's just I don't have a whole lot of time to create, you know, a big layout anymore. So when it comes to journaling, there are just three things. I mean, I could share a lot of things that will be helpful to you when it comes to journaling if this is something that you want to, you know, do more often. So the first thing would be do keep a routine, you know, make it more like a consistent time. Choose a time that will work best for you. It could be, I do it most of the time. I do it at nighttime before bed, you know, when the whole world is kind of quiet. My whole world here at home is quiet with the kids sleeping and, you know, the dogs are more calm and relaxed. This is something that I do for myself. So it's like most of the time I do it before bed. You know, I just sit down with a pen and paper. You know, it's not always about creativity. It's not always about art. Sometimes it's just really my thoughts to paper. And then sometimes I do so before I start my day. I think I like that more now because what happens is that, you know, when we wake up in the morning, we think about all the things that we're going to do. We're like, oh God, I need to do this. I need to finish this. I need to submit this, or I need to, you know, things like that. So what helps me a lot is that when I sit down with my thoughts, you know, first I get my journal, I write things that I'm grateful for. You know, so it's like really, I start with three things that I'm like, okay, what are the things? It could be the same every day. It doesn't matter. You know, you write things down as simple as I thank you for the, you know, the cool air because it's hot. Simple things like that. But really, what helps me is that it puts me, it kind of like sets the tone for the whole day. It puts me in a zone where, you know, in a really in a state of gratefulness, which is really good. And then what helps is that with my bullet journal, I write down and then it's kind of like a brain dump. You know, I call this a brain dump where I just list down everything that I need to take care of. And I'm thinking everything that I'm thinking in my head, you just put down in a paper. So journaling is really so helpful. I cannot stress that enough. Second one is make it easy. Really make it easy for you. Maybe start with something very simple. And these are the things that we're going to learn today. I mean, you know, you're probably doing it and we're just going to have fun today. You're probably already doing all of these activities in your journal, but, you know, we'll sit down again and just kind of like chit chat and talk stories while we're doing something creative. Keep it simple. The third one is let go of imperfection. I know we always talk about that here in our classes for Faber-Castell and Michaels, but it really is, it's so powerful to let go of the perfections because it's overrated. We don't need perfection. Your journal doesn't have to be perfect. You don't even have to show it to anybody if you don't want to, right? Because it's for your eyes only. So whatever it is, make it work for you. Okay, so here we go. Like what I've mentioned, I have my Faber-Castell Goldfaber Aqua. This is something that I'll be working. A palette. I also pulled out some of my polychromos pencils. These are just regular pencils, color pencils, but it's oil-based. So it means that it's not going to blend in with the water. So we can create like borders and lines, you know, using the pencils. That's good. If you don't have any type of pencils there, it's okay. If you have any archival pigment type of pen, these ones that I have is from Faber-Castell. This is an India ink, so water-based India ink. I have it in two different tips. I have the Fudanowski medium and I have a very fine tip like a 0.1. So this one will not blend with water as long as we, you know, give it some time to dry. If you don't have anything like that, maybe you have alcohol ink. You know, alcohol ink will not bleed. and it will not blend with water as well. So that's something that you can use. And then I also pulled out my Goldfaber Aqua. These are pencils that are water soluble. So these will blend with water. So, that's why it's sort of like a mixed media, because we're going to have fun and explore what are the things that we can do. And if you notice here, my mixed media journal, I just put in some washi tape so I can do small area that we can practice. Now, you don't have to do this. You can do the whole page. It's okay. Right. So here we go. I'm just going to make sure that I pull out your chats. All right. So are we ready? First of all, I'm going to go start and work on my palette. The colors that I have today, very fall. So I have this one is a light yellow ochre. Just going to put it there. I have the terracotta. I love this color. This one is the pine green. Gorgeous. I mean, look at all that gorgeous colors. They're so beautiful. And then this one is the vintage pink. I love this color as well. Yeah, well, cardstock, Heidi, is it's going to work, but it might not blend exactly the way you would like it, because the cardstock will, I believe it's going to excuse me, it's really going to sip that water. It's going to absorb it very fast. So just kind of be mindful of that one. With a mixed media paper or a watercolor paper, what it does, it just it gives it some time to let it sit on top of that paper, so you'll have enough time to blend, and do all that magical things with a soluble or a watercolor. So Judith says that, hey, Lay, I bought the Faber-Castell Goldfaber Aqua, Goldfaber, but not the Aqua. When using them dry, is there a difference? Yes. So when using them dry, I'm not sure there's a difference. I think the only difference with the Aqua and the Faber-Castell, just this one, is that this will blend with water. The regular one is not going to. So I don't think when use dry, I don't think I've noticed any difference. But that's the only difference, is that you will not be able to use it with water. All right. But dry, it's going to be okay. So, you can use that to do some mark making instead of the polychromos. That's the pencil that you can use today. Okay, so let's start very simple. I am going to start to my left side. Now, when it comes to watercolor, there's two techniques that is so important to master, think about. Wet on dry and then wet on wet, really. So wet on dry would be a wet brush on a dry paper, and a wet on wet would be a wet paper and then a wet brush, right? So I like to do both things. Knowing the two different techniques really does help a lot. And so we're going to do both. I'm going to start with a wet on wet, so you can see how the colors are blending. I'm going to start with one corner, really. So all we're doing today is learning some few exercises that you can do. I love doing this to create like background for my lettering. I really love this, or just a quick background for my journal and my thoughts. So it's nice to have, instead of just a plain one. So the paper is wet, and I'm just going to drop in some of the colors. I don't think my brush is wet enough. So as you can see, the ink is going to bloom and spread, and it's going to follow the direction of the water because that paper is wet. So this is called the wet on wet technique. I love doing this when I don't want anything sharp. I just want like a soft bloom. I want like a soft blend. Then this one is really nice to do. Let me just adjust her brightness so you can see much better. So I'm going to go wet my brush some more. I'm going to go drop in some more inks. Just add a little bit more there. Now, my only thing about water-soluble markers like this is that when every single time that they, that it gets, water is introduced to it, the colors might lift a little bit. Now, it depends on the water-soluble product that you're using or a medium. The gelatos is that when they're dry, this one is not going to lift. The colors are going to stay. But you know, our Albert Durer, it's going to lift because basically it is a watercolor pigment. So you're using watercolor pigments. This one, the watercolor, the water-based dye inks will also lift with water. So just think about that, you know, so just be careful with all your journal pages if you don't want, you know, to ruin your beautiful creations. So just be mindful of that one. So I'm going to let this one dry. So this part right here of my paper is dry. So I'm just going to wet. This time we're going to do a wet on dry. So that means wet brush and dry paper. So we're going to start just making marks, really. So like a vertical line. And then if you're using a round brush, I want you to play around with the amount of pressure that you're using and you're applying. Also, the way you're holding your brush. See how I'm kind of like playing around? See what kind of stroke I can make if I do this from top to bottom and that my brush is not angled. But this time I'm going to angle my hand around 45 degrees, just so I can see how much thick I can create by just applying slightly heavier pressure and also doing a 45-degree angle, just like this. Now, of course, when you see the markers in the palette, they're very bright and super saturated. Once the water touch that, of course, you're going to lose a little bit of that saturation, right? So do is really just add more layers if you want a little bit more opacity and saturation or vibrancy of your colors. So I'm just going to add just slightly bit in there. So this part right here really is already called mark making. Now, what I like to do with watercolors is that I love to create backgrounds with watercolors. Like what I said, every time I would write down an affirmation word or a quote, I love adding some watercolors just for my background, just so it's not plain white, because sometimes that plain white, that's the fear of that blank page. So every time I see a blank page, it's like, gosh, what am I going to create? So all I do is I just have fun. I lay down colors like this. I lay down shapes. I lay down, you know, marks like this. And once I see the color in there, it just inspired me. Okay, what can I add? You know, I can do this. I can add that. So you're taking out that fear of that blank page by just adding just simple colors. Now I'm picking up some of what color is that yellow that we have? The light yellow ochre. And I'm going to go drop in a little bit more here where I can see that the paper is still slightly wet. And I'm going to add some vertical lines and I'm going to stretch it to the area where it's dry. So you can see the effect of that wet on wet to the wet on dry. So all that light yellow ochre is still blending over here. And this one, you're going to create a very sharp line. So when your paper is wet and you're adding some pigments or some colors in there, you're not going to get any sharp details because that pigment or that color is going to follow your water and that paper. So you're not getting any sharp impression or any sharp details. So this is just an exercises that we can practice when it comes to the wet on wet and then the wet on dry. So I'm just going to add in a little bit more yellow, light yellow ochre, so we can have that. And then we're going to let this one dry. Okay, so we basically did the first thing that I wanted to share with you, are shapes. Simple shapes and patterns like this one is really easy to add to your journal. It doesn't require a whole lot of thinking, you know. This is where I always start, lines. I love adding lines in here. I'm just going to add more pigments, drop in more water. I'm going to go across it, and you're going to see parts of that color is going to lift. just like that. And when you overlay them, you will still be able to see the color underneath. So doing these simple exercises will just really help you to understand how the medium will behave in different type of scenarios or techniques and situations. So you're like, okay, if I add a layer on top of that already dry mark, what is going to happen? So because it is watercolor, you're still going to see the layer underneath that. Now, if you're using an acrylic paint, you will not see the underneath layer, which is the green, because the acrylic markers are very opaque. Acrylic marker, you can use gouache. Those are very opaque, and so you can really cover up a lot of layers underneath. But having watercolors like this, it just gives you a very, very different type of result. And so I do both. I like to play around with both, but most of the time when it comes to backgrounds, I really love using just watercolors in here. Now, aside from lines, what can we do? You can play around with lines, diagonal lines, zigzag lines. You can do like dashed lines, just like this, by just using the tip of the brush. I'm just going to create some marks in here, just as simple as that. And every time I do any type of exercises like this, it really does put me into this Zen mode. I'm like just not even thinking about anything. I'm just here. I'm here creating, and I am playing, and I am having fun. There's not a whole lot of thinking process when I'm doing any type of mark making like this. Now, another one, aside from lines, are just basic simple shapes like ovals. This is probably something that I do a lot, is different types of ovals or like blobs. I like to call them blobs. Kind of like you get irregular shapes. So I'm going to go add on top of this one. This is still slightly wet, so we'll see what it's going to look like. We probably won't see the intensity on top of that, so we'll just focus on this part right here. So if you want to do any type of layering, make sure that you let the underneath layer dry first before you add another layer, because look at the difference because this was still wet, the first layer of the kind of like orangey color in there, terracotta, and then I added some burnt sienna on top. You really can't see because the burnt sienna just blended with the terracotta. But over here, underneath, which is the pine color, I use some of the vintage pink. You can still see the details of the pine because we let that one layer first dry. Does that make sense? Do you have any questions when it comes to layering and things like that? I'm wondering what you guys love technique you like to use when it comes to your watercolors. Are you impatient like me? I am so impatient when it comes to watercolors. That is why I have a heat tool that I use just to dry the layers, because I know, every time I would layer a wet paint on top of a wet, paint, it's not going to give me any type of layer because it's just going to blend. So for me to be, kind of like move on and keep doing what I love to do, I have a heat tool and I just kind of like dry it. Okay, then now I can add another layer on top of it. Does that make sense? Oh my God, no, I think it's from the light. Oh gosh, I wish I have a purple hair. I don't think I can rock a purple hair, Judith. I don't think so. Yeah, I think it's just from my light, my backlight. It's giving me a purple shade, huh? That's good. Okay, so now let's see if we add another bit, because you can definitely tell if your paper is still wet. So see how kind of like very smooth all the blending over there is, even when we added the layer of the light yellow ochre on top of it, because it was still wet, it just kind of bloomed and blended. But because this part of here is dry, we got this sharp impression. So, all right, we got those two basic things. I'm going to add a little bit here. I'm just going to add some dashed lines in here. So when it comes to blending and creating in your journals, one of my suggestions would be choose a color palette. You know, limit your colors to maybe 3 or 4. Have one color, you know, play around with the value of the colors that you're going to choose. Because if you're going to do a lot of layering, you want to make sure that you have a darker color to create some contrast in your page or in your work. That is why I have this one. I think this is the black. Yep, just the black one. So we can add some layers and really contrast over here. So I'm going to pick up just a little bit more. And I don't want to wet too much of the brush, just enough from when you kind of blend that. The black handle brushes on your table. Ah, gosh, this one is from King Art. So I love those set. I have like different type of size of the brush. And they're not super expensive, so it's really nice. Because every time I would do journaling, I'm really not kind to my brushes. So I just kind of like, the only thing that I can advise is to not leave your brushes in your water. So if you're using like a bowl, make sure to kind of let them dry just like this. You know, if we use this brush, just let it dry like that. Don't leave it where it's like here, because you're going to ruin the point of your brush. So just let it dry just like this. Let it dry horizontal, just like that. And then you're not going to have any problem. I am not going to say that I didn't do that a lot of times, but I'm still going to say don't do it. The brand is called King Art. There we go. So I'm just going to add a little bit here also. Okay. So now that we have just taken care of the basic techniques, now we can create like a page that we are going to be happy with. Do you guys have any type of plastic, you know, maybe a packaging from anything there? Do you have a Ziploc? Do you have anything of that sort? Because that would be really nice to have right now. Because I have something that I want to share with you. I think that we've made this before. So I'm going to grab like a packaging plastic in here, just like that. Any plastic like this. Okay, so this time we're going to keep our page dry, this right side. But I'm going to use this one plastic in here. And I'm going to start with my lightest color first, okay? So this is our light yellow ochre. And I'm going to drop in some water to activate those pigments. Hello, pigments, wake up. Just going to add water. Just like this. Oh, it is Cecilia, it is my design. This is part of our September Little Bits box. So I drew that. I make my drawings into stationery goodies. So it's called the Little Bits box. This is part of the September kit that I have designed. Okay, so if you guys have your plastic in here like that, if you have like any acrylic block or anything smooth that you can use. Lisa, yes, junk journaling is always fun. Okay, this is what we're going to do. So just now that I've activated those pigments, I'm just going to do like a kissy like this. Just move in here, and I'll just add some here. Just kind of touch it to your paper, just like that. And I started with just 2 corners, one to the bottom left and then on the top right. So we're just going to leave it like that. And I'm going to clean this. This is where our heat gun would be really, really helpful. All right, I'm gonna go dry this. Thank you, Lisa. Now, if you have like a lot of pool of water, what you can do is just get your paper towel like this, and just kind of like let it absorb that excess water if you have like too much. Because sometimes I do this, and even the heat tool is having a hard time drying it because there's just a lot of water. So I just kind of like let the paper towel absorb that. Just let it absorb it. Now you may be using a different color palette. That's great. You know, you don't have to use this. Okay, we don't really want to bake it. We just want to help it dry faster. All right, so we have the lightest color. Now I want to have I want to introduce my second color in here. I'm going to use the vintage pink. And I'm going to, oh, where's the plastic? Plastic here. A generous amount of pigment in there. And then doing the same, we're just gonna drop in some water in here. Just a little bit, too much. You can blend it like that if you want, just like that. Just clean the brush. And then we'll do the same thing. I'm going to add it to the side. Just want to introduce this second color. And again, this one is not going to really blend with our light yellow ochre because we have dried that first layer. So what it's going to do is sit on top of that first layer, because if we didn't dry it, what's going to happen is that the colors are just going to blend, right? So you're going to create another color, and I didn't want that. I want the colors to really pop, and I want them to be separated. So I don't want those colors to blend. I want them to be a separate layer, just like this. Right, and then I will dry it again. Again, not trying to bake it, but we're just going to help it. Now, just this alone really is good enough for me when it comes to my backgrounds, when it comes to lettering or, you know, any type of writing. If I have like a quote that I've seen online and I want to write it down over here. This is really good enough for me. But if you want to introduce a little bit of kind of like mark making, you already have, you know, some of those spots where the pigment laid down, so you have a little bit of shapes in here. What you can do is use the same marker that we've used. So we've used the vintage pink, right? So what you can do is kind of like trace over that and really highlight the different type of shapes that, you know, the irregular marks that you've put it in here. Cecilia, no, some of them, not every product. It's most of the time in one kit. So sometimes some are listed if we have extras. All right, so I'm just going to go over, but instead of using my marker, I'm actually going to use pencil that is very similar to the color that I've used in here. So this is Indian red. It is not similar, but this one's going to be slightly darker, but I'm okay with that. So I'm just going to trace in those little mini shapes that I see in here. And see, this is the reason why I love doing this. And it really does put me in this kind of like very mindful space, because there's not a whole lot of thinking required doing this. It's like playing. It's like a free play. Just like that. I'll do one. Oh, should I do this one big one? Sure, why not? Let's do it. Just like that. Maybe I'll add this one big one here too. I love doing that plastic technique because it really does create like very irregular spots. You know, you can create this by kind of like doing some splatters, but I think when you do splatter, it's more like you really end up with like very circular, very round shapes instead of, doing this in the plastic. You get these irregular marks in different variety of sizes as well. So it's really fun to do that. Okay, so now that I have that, I would normally add in just a little bit of I'm going to use the terracotta. And I'm going to add some lines in here. Now, my lines are not going to be long. It's just going to be very small. I'll probably do it here. It's like a dashed. So we're adding like little bits of dash. Just like that. And I'll do the same thing over here. Just so you can have the same look across your page or your layout. Now I'm going to bring in the light yellow ochre. And I'm going to do the same thing here. This one's going to be slightly lighter. I think here. This type of art journaling really doesn't need a whole lot of kind of like decisions, almost like it's a gut feeling. And that is why I love doing this style, is because every time I would do any type of work, design work like that, there's a lot of like decision making. But when I'm doing this type of journaling, it's so freeing. It's almost like really you can't go wrong. There's no wrong or right in here one. In this, you're just really having fun. There's not a whole lot of, oh my gosh, where am I going to put it? So it's all based, my decisions are like based in my intuition, what feels right, what feels right here. And most of the time when I'm doing this, there's not a whole lot of talking also required. So honestly, if I'm not talking like this to you, I could probably finish like one whole spread, like a big page like this in like 15 minutes. So that's all I need. And then I do my quote in here. I add a little bit of like, positive affirmation. Trust yourself, believe in yourself. I cannot stress enough how really powerful the words of affirmation is for me. It really does set the tone of my whole day. That's why it's so important for me to kind of like sit down in my journal, in my planner, in my notebook, whatever it is that you want to call it, and then really does set the tone for the day. All right. So for example, like this, I'm going to write in my quote. Probably, I love you got this. I know it's so cheesy, but honestly, it's like a pat in the back for me. Like, come on, Lay, you got this. And I really, really love it. I write it so many times in my journals. So I'm just going to write it here. I'm using my favorite Faber-Castell PITT Artist pen. This is the Fudenoske medium. It looks like a regular brush. It looks like a regular pen, but this flexible nib right here will help you create thin and thick lines, of course, depending on the amount of pressure that you're applying while you're using the marker. Isn't that so beautiful? It looks like just a regular pen or a marker, but when you do the correct angle of your brush, notice how I'm writing it. I'm not holding it upside down or, upright position. I have it angled like this so I can really use the tip and the body of this nib. And then we've got, and then apply a little bit of pressure every time you would do a downstroke or every time you write towards your body. And then you use the tip and apply a light pressure when you're going upstroke or away from you. And if you need any help when it comes to brush lettering, we have a lot of classes over at Michael's YouTube channel as well that you can check out. So there we go. We have this one, then this one is just our sample page. So it's kind of look wonky, but you know what? I'd probably use this too and just say, love more. Because it's nice background. Looks like that. I love it. And then when you take out this washi tape, it will give you like that beautiful border. It's so satisfying to do also. Sometimes I feel bad wasting the washi tape, but this is like the perfect size for an A5 size, because sometimes the other tapes that I have is like too big. I'm not left with enough space in my A5 journal. So the 15 mil washi tape is really just perfect for me. All right, now let's do a whole spread over here. Remember what I said about circular? This one is really fun to do. Now I'm gonna go create my palette here. I'm gonna do with the pine, this gorgeous color. I am going to do the burnt sienna, just like that. And I'm going to do the light yellow ochre. So we'll start with a three color palette, okay? Start with 3. And then we're going to create some circular shapes. Now I'm going to start in with my light yellow ochre. And what you want to do is you want to play around with the size of your circle shape or your oval shape. So I start with the line and then I fill that in, right? Not a whole lot of thinking. We're just going to fill it in. And I'll play around with that size. Now give it a little bit of space so you can add more colors later on. I'm going to make it where it's like overhanging here. Just do this. So it's like a circular shape. Drop in some more water. Here, just circle. It doesn't have to be perfect. And I'll do the same thing here. You notice I have like a little pattern where I really love doing in the corners first. It's almost like setting up and creating a border for whatever it is that you need to write in the middle. And what it does is that it really creates this beautiful flow from the top, from the bottom to the top, or, you know, it could be from the top to the bottom as well. Just a small one. All right, now clean your brush. Make sure your brush is cleaned before we add another color. I'm going to do the pine. Make sure I have enough water like this. Now we just blend it. Fill in some of that area right there. Now, if you want to create like a layer on top of your light yellow ochre, make sure that it's dry. We don't have a whole lot of water in here, so you can probably put in a layer in there and it will not blend so much. Just depends on how much water you've used. Probably use a small one just right here. And a small one that's like overhanging on over here. This one is super wet. It's going to take a little bit to dry. Now, what you can do with these circles are many, many different things. You can use it as a placement, you know, where you can place the words. You can really do a lot of things in here, or you can just use it really as a decoration, just like this. Okay, now I'm going to introduce my third color, which is the burnt sienna. To add enough water in here so that it will really blend. All right. And this time I'm going to see if we can layer it, okay? So I'm just going to add in a little bit and really focus on the outside. I think it's really still blending with that light yellow ochre that we've added. So I'm probably just going to add in just a little bit more. Maybe this one layer just a little bit. Just kind of like some of them are touching. Just like that. I love the soft effect of the watercolors. It's so calming just seeing how the colors are blending or how it travels with the water, you know, when we do the wet on wet technique. Just doing, you know, those different exercises, the different types of blending, it's really going to help you feel more confident when you're doing any type of um, art journaling like this, because you already know how your paints are going to behave, you know, the pigments once they're dry. But then, of course, sometimes it really is just the paper that you're using, you know, those are like big factors. Sometimes the paper alone is like, it doesn't make your pigments blend enough. So you're like, you get frustrated, you know, afterwards. You're like, why is this not blending enough for me? It's not about you, it's probably the paper. So, you know, so just kind of like really think about those things. Notice here, some of that are like bleeding through with the green, and I'm okay with that. I really am. I'm going to bring in a little bit more of that green color over here, just a tad bit more. And then we're going to dry this. Just a little bit. Just so it has a little bit of flow. Oh, just on top of that. We'll do the same thing here. Top of that. And just a little bit more here. I'm gonna try it. And I love seeing the effects of the pigments once they're dry, and even while they're drying. Can you see how this one is like where kind of the wet mark, the dry part, because it has a lot of pool of water, and that's it kind of left those organic marks like that. Now, what you need to do is grab your, whether you have a pencil like this, if you have a pencil, or if you have like a fine liner tip like this one, this is the 0.1, right? You can choose a circle that you want and then kind of like go over it. Please don't be perfect, and kind of go over it like maybe 4 or 5 times, like this one, if our camera would focus. See that one? So you want to go over that, you know, maybe 4 or 6 times, and try to be loose so you're not getting like, the more wonky it is, the better it is. Just like that, right? And then I think I'm gonna do this one, the small one, like this, and probably like this. Just like that. And a little bit more, the small one here. Remember, you want it to feel organic. You don't want it to be tight. You want your art to be loose. So notice how I'm holding it kind of like almost here and not here. When I write, I hold my marker here almost to the tip. But when I'm trying to be loose with my marks, I kind of hold it in the almost in the middle, and I just kind of like go around like that. There. And then I'm going to choose the light yellow ochre right here. Just go through that and then do the same thing. Just go over this one and then this one. Just like that. Yeah. See, it's so cool. Eee, so pretty. All right. Love it. Right. Now we're going to choose another circle. I'm going to use a pencil this time, just so it looks different, because the pencil will, especially if you're using like a cold press, a lot of texture in your paper, the pencil marks are going to look very different than the fine liner marker. So, choose like a different medium. Maybe you have like an oil pastel that you can use. Try and do that. It's going to be really fun. Okay, so I'm going to use this one. This is the Payne's Gray. I love Payne's Gray. I know I have like a brown. I have the Indian red, and then I have the red violet. I'm probably going to use the Indian red first on top of our burnt sienna. And this time I'm going to add some diagonal lines. So you can choose a pattern that you like. Maybe you want to add some circles inside, some dots, So I think I'm going to start with just diagonal, just like this. And again, I'm just not trying to be so tight. Not trying to make it, perfect. So having that pencil mark will add, a different layer and a different character on top of this. So yet another interest on your page. Just like that. And I'll add one here. Just like that. I'll have one more here because I have more brown in here. Just like this. So can you see like a different, see the pencil? It creates like that pencil mark and it's very different from the fine liner. So you're adding layers and layers to that. Now I am going to use the same color, the light yellow ochre. I'm going to go over on top of my yellow marks and I'm going to add like just dash of lines inside. And I'm just going to fill the whole shape. Just like that. Maybe, this one is diagonal. So this is like very zen. If you're doing this on your own, you're like so into this right now. This is something that you can practice with different shapes. Maybe next time you do it with like a heart, or maybe like more of an irregular circular shape, like a blob. That's fun too. Just like that. And I'll add some in here. This one is looking very different because I'm trying to hurry. But it's okay. Because what we're trying to do here is we're adding texture, we're adding layers, we're adding more visual interest. I mean, just the watercolor dots earlier are just perfect already, right? But we're just learning to add more layers in here. The type of tape that I use, it's called a washi tape. So a washi tape is really nice to use in your journal because it's not going to hurt the surface of the paper because it doesn't have a really sticky adhesive. Or you can use just, an artist tape as well. If you can find like a smaller size, because my usual tape is like this, it's a bit wider and I'm just using a small A5 size. Sometimes I'm not left with a lot of space anymore. So, right, I like that. I think I'm good with this. Right now, I think I want to add something in the green, inside the green. So I'm going to use the Payne's Gray. I don't know. I don't know if I want to. Like what I said, it's more like a gut feeling when we're doing this. But I think I'm going to add something. I think I'm going to add like the triangle. What do you call right triangle when it's facing to the right? I'm gonna do this in 3, just like this. So I'm using the Payne's Gray colored pencils from Faber-Castell. This is called the Polychromos. Just like that. Do the same here. I want to do this in 3s. I like doing things in 3s. I'll do the same thing, but this one is going to be facing down instead of going to the right. Just like this. So you're adding more layers. I think this one I'm going to do to the right. So we have one that's just odd, that's facing down. I like that though. Now I'm going to use the burnt sienna again. We're going to add some splatter on top of this. I'm going to use my round brush. This is the number 6. Just going to use it on top of this. And how I like to do my splatter, you want to make sure that you have a lot of water in here, right? You want to make sure that, yeah, absolutely, Valeria. That is so amazing. Use just like holiday colors. You know, this is perfect for fall, for like a Thanksgiving card. This is so simple and easy. You can whip it, your DIY cards. But yes, for Christmas, it's going to be really perfect. It's almost like Christmas ornaments, you know. So now I'm going to hold my brush over here on the top, just like this. And then I'm just going to flick it, tap it. Just like that. I'm going to go pick up a little bit more. It's just a little bit messy when you're doing splatters, but trust me, it's so fun. Just clean up after. But it just creates like such a different, so fun. I love it. I absolutely love it. I believe that we're going to have classes in November. I'm not sure if we're going to have December just because, you know, it's the holidays. So we'll probably do some holiday classes by November, but I have to double check. Maybe it's just the last 2 weeks of December that we're not going to have any schedule. But yes, we'll be doing classes until November. Oh, that is so pretty. Now, what you can do if you don't want to wait forever, you know, what you can do is go over with your paper towel, kind of like lay it on top of it. I'll show you just, you know, but you're going to pick up some of the pigments, you know, just think about that. It's not going to be as intense. The colors are not going to be as intense as this one when you do this technique, but I love doing this also. Kind of like lay down your paper towel, just like this, and just kind of apply some pressure like that. Oops. And then just lift. So you still have splatters, but you know, it's a little bit lighter. So does that make sense? October classes, yes, we're gonna have October classes. We're gonna create like very fun fall and then Halloween themed. I'm super excited for that one. All right, so now that we have this, I mean, you can really leave it as it is. If you have like gold markers or anything like that of some sort that you want to add in here, that's a perfect time to do it. But I also like to use my pencil. I'm going to use the same color. I think this is the burnt sienna as well, if I'm not mistaken. Nope, it's not 192. Not sure. Okay, so I'm just going to use my brush. This is if you have the Goldfaber Aqua, okay, pencils. This one is the water-soluble one. Now, you don't want to dip this in a bowl. That's the no-no. We don't want to do that. What you want to do is just use a brush like this, and you want to just add some water on the tip of your pencil, just like that. Just like that. So you kind of activate all those pigments in there, right? So, but we don't want to dip this. Of course, you're so welcome. Okay, so now that this is wet, I'm just going to add a line going down. And I'm going to make my line just kind of like this. Just like that. But it's so cool. And then I'm going to add a little bit more. I'm going to do the opposite side. Just gonna add over here. I'm just kind of like letting it slide and go all the way. Just so because we add another texture in here. But yeah, this is really it. If you want to add just a little bit more marks, it's up to you. You can, again, remember what we talked about today. Your journal is yours. So make sure that you make it yours. Don't try to kind of like think about, oh, this is wrong. There's no wrong or right when it comes to your journal. This is your journal. You make it as however you want it to be. Does that make sense? Because it is yours. And so it's like no one can tell you that it is wrong or you're doing it wrong. So I hope that this class was so fun. I know it was very relaxing. I know it was easy, but sometimes it's nice to have classes like this where there's not a whole lot of thinking. There's not a whole lot of process to it other than the whole purpose of just creating and really having fun. But as always, guys, it's my pleasure being with you and helping you and, inspiring you to be more creative in your day-to-day lives. If you have any questions that maybe I didn't answer today, you can always reach out to me through my social media. It's at Momile. I'm always there. I'm always available for you. And of course, for more information and inspiration, make sure to follow us at Faber-Castell USA, and of course at Michael's stores as well. Thank you so much, everybody. As always, until next week, stay creative and stay happy. Bye, everyone.